So I'm just gonna kick it off with you, just you and I talking, and the video is gonna go on the Rising Coaches platform.
Okay.
So any coaches that were not able to come in, they get to rewatch it and everything else.
All right. That's cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on, to be honest, man.
Hey, brother, listen. I know I've said this to you before, but like you've definitely been one of those guys after Kessler left. You've definitely been one of those guys that I've kind of been watching. Because you and I, we met outside of basketball, so it was kind of interesting to say, oh wow, he's coaching.
Right.
So I definitely been watching what you've been doing, and to grab the team that a lot of people did not really think was gonna make it to a certain level. Welcome, Menelik and David. I appreciate you guys checking in. But yeah, Jay, to see what you've done with that program, man, you definitely a guy that I will always say it. And I know some people have even come to me and like, bro, why are you always giving Jason props? Like, I'm like, bro, like he's doing it, and he's doing it the right way. And that's what I always admire about you. You all about basketball, about developing young people. And that's why I give you your roses, man. So we're gonna kick it off. I'm gonna turn it over to you. Just fill us in on your journey, how you got to be the head coach at Apollo High School, and going from where the program was to section champion in what, 3 years?
Right. Yeah, right? Man. Yeah, man. I never, man, growing up, a lot of people I've talked to that coach always was saying, well, hey, I thought about being a coach in high school. I may have thought about it in college. I never thought about coaching basketball growing up. I just wanted to play it, loved to play it, wanted to get better. Never thought about coaching. But I had went through a down period in my life where I was just struggling, basically running the streets. And not meaning running the streets as far as like out there hustling, but just partying, not doing nothing. You know what I mean? Not really being a good person that I thought I should be. And I wanted a new lifestyle. And Brett Carmichael, shout out to Brett Carmichael, John Williams. They used to play at Apollo under Dean. So I had ran into them in St. Cloud, and I remember they had an AAU program called Minnesota Lockdown. So I was like, hey, man, y'all need any help? They like, we don't know right now. Give us some time. We give you a call back. So I waited a couple of days. Brett called me like, hey, man, we need some help. I'm like, all right, man, I'll come and join. And at that time, I was in St. Cloud, and they was living in Maple Grove, so I had to go down there for practice. And so I went down there, met him and John, and they're like, yeah, man, you can help us out. So my first year with them, I was basically like a volunteer assistant, just trying to understand the game of coaching basketball. But what was a surprise for me was I thought I knew how to coach basketball because I played basketball, and that's the worst mistake you can ever make, right? So I didn't know really how to do the X's and O's, so I was just basically observing John and Brett that first year. Then that second year we came back, I started really like focusing on how if I was going to be a head coach, how things would work for me, how my offense would run, how I would interact with parents, how I would have player meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So I went through that year. And our second year, we was really successful as a program, Minnesota Lockdown. Both our 15 and 16U teams won state. Our 15U team had Jarvis Mercer, who's currently playing for the Gophers, on it. And then our 16U team had Trey Burhow, who's currently playing at Northern Iowa, one of the better players for that team too. So heading into my third year with Minnesota Lockdown, we switched to Powerhouse. Heading into my third year of Minnesota Lockdown, I got hired to work in the district at North. I got hired to work at North. So we have that, that orientation we have where everybody go in the district. I go there and I run into Dean, and he's like, hey, Jay, you want to do some volunteer? And I'm like, I was nervous because, high school basketball is different from AAU basketball. I'm like, yeah. So I came on that first year. First year went pretty smooth. But, as when you high school coach in St. Cloud, you get to go and do the SCABA tryouts or whatever they have. So at SCABA tryouts, I see a lot of these 8th graders, and I'm like, this is my first year trying to get my own AAU team. I should look into some of these kids. So I started talking to them, and me and their parents are talking about when the summer come, hey, I want them on my AAU team. So that first year I had my AAU team, and it was my first year being a high school basketball coach. So I was trying to balance doing our AAU workouts, but at the same time, make sure I'm there for Dean and Enoch at the time, who was the head coach and the assistant. So the high school year go through, AAU year go through. At the end of the high school year, Dean retired. So at that point, Enoch got the job after Dean retired. So went through the summer with the AAU with some of the players you know, Michael, Porch, Jalen, Dang, etc. Went through the AAU summer with them. We come back that next year. Enoch got the job. They named me top assistant, which means I was the head JV1 coach. So we go through that year, man, and that year was rocky, right? You can put blame anywhere. I was on that staff too. It was just a rocky year that year. So the end of the year, I'm thinking everything's going to be fine. We'll be back. We're going to be good. And Enoch ends up getting let go, right? For whatever reason, not even to get into it, he ends up getting let go. So then as soon as I heard that, I go over to Apollo and I talk to the AD at the time, Dave, and I'm like, hey, I heard the news. I'm just wondering what that means for me. And he's like, hey, you can be our intern. You can be the intern coach, and you got to apply for the job, and we got to interview just like everybody else. At that moment, I start conducting myself as like the real head coach, like I was going to get the job. I start having player meetings. I start giving them grade sheets. I start telling them when open gym was. I start telling them my expectation as the coach instantly that moment. So we went through the year. Now I'm still in my second year as a head coach with Powerhouse, but it's still technically my fourth year really coaching basketball, like my fourth year coaching basketball as a whole. So we going through the summer, going through the spring, and Dave's doing interviews. And so my interview was like on a Friday, and I was supposed to be coaching in the AAU state tournament that day. So he called me over to North to like, hey, like, Coach Allen, can you come over here? Because I made a decision on who's going to be the head coach. And my whole time over there, I'm not even thinking it's me. Like, this is how negative my mindset is. I'm telling myself, like, man, I'm not going to get the job. He's probably already find somebody else. And then I'm thinking that if he hires somebody else, there's no guarantee they're going to want me on staff. So I walk in his office, and like we sat down. He looked at me for like 2-3 minutes. And I'm looking at him like, come on. And he's like, Coach, you're gonna be my new head coach. And I'm like, just like this. I'm like, Dave, thank you, man. I appreciate it. One of the better days. It's one of the better days of my life. When I got outside that school, I probably screamed loud as possible, calling everybody, because man, that wasn't in it for me. Like I never got into coaching thinking I was going to be a high school head coach in 5 years, but once I got into high school, I moved up every year based on situations that happened. So the thing that was able to make me good with that program, and we'll get it to where it is now at Apollo, was my 8th grade team that I was coaching was consistent. Most of the players that was seniors this year. But at the time, they didn't know I was going to be the head coach, and I didn't know if they were still going to be going to Apollo. Just because you go to North Junior High doesn't mean you don't go to Apollo. It's kids that go to North and go to Tech, and it's kids that go to South and go to Apollo. So that wasn't a guarantee for that. We moved into our first year, man, and we won more conference games, and we won a section game over Alex. And so then the next year we improved our win total, and we won conference, which is one of the goals we set out when I took over as coach. The thing that we had to do to get to where we was to win that, was to change the culture, was to hold guys acceptable for behavior on and off the court, right? You got to hold them acceptable for that. We set expectations of practice. It's like, this is how we're going to practice. Right or wrong, this is how we're going to practice. Either you're going to get on the boat or you're going to get off, right? And we talked about how they conduct themselves not only in school, in the community, right? Those were expectations we set, and those were some of the non-negotiables that we weren't going to be willing to deal with. So we move on into this year. I knew what we had coming back this year, so I knew this year could be a pretty good year. I just didn't know if we was going to be able to gel the way we needed to gel. And whether that was on me or that was on them, our junior year didn't go the way it went, right? My second year, we did win conference, but we lost to Bemidji in the section semis. And I can remember walking in the locker room, and it was a really emotional locker room. And I'm like, you know what? We'll be back. And when we be back, we're going to cash into it. I just felt like we would be back and we would be ready. So starting this past summer, before summer ball started our practice, I walked into the gym and it just felt different. Like for our first day of practice with Michael and Porch and Thomas and the twins, it just felt different, right? It felt really different. And we went on and had a good summer. They did a good job during the fall of staying in shape. We had a good fall ball. Then the season came. As you can remember in the season, we jumped out 12-0, right? Undefeated. We had the game against Cambridge where we're down 25 at half, and we come back and go on a 44-4 run and end up beating them by 20, something that I had never been a part of. I still watch that today, And I'm trying to understand how I didn't throw them off the bench or they didn't throw me out the game somehow. But that game was one of the craziest games I've been a part of, and that's when I knew how good we was. So, like I said, we go on 12-0, and we play against Delano, who at the time I think was probably number 5 in the state, and I think we're number 7 in 3A. Go in there, and they beat us by 20, right? That's our first loss. So we get back to Apollo the next day. I think we had a game. We had a game the next day. Yeah, actually, we had a game the next day. And I want to say, game the day after against Patrick Henry, lost that game. That's 2 in a row. Then we go and we get beat by Alex. That's 3 in a row. And then then we go and get beat by Brainerd. That's 4 in a row. So we went from being really high to being able to humble ourselves. Through that time, though, and I never brought, if you remember when me and you talked, I never brought up the reasons why I felt like that losing streak was going where it was, right? But let's
do this now. What was the reason?
I mean, we had to teach some players some lessons, right? We had to sit some guys for not being good teammates. I felt like we probably got comfortable with success, whether that was them and whether that was me. I felt like we got comfortable. Once we got 12-0, it's like, oh, we're going to be good. But no, when you get 12-0 and when you become good, you become the hunted. And it's easy to be the hunter. Are you able to be the hunted? And that's being consistent every day in practice. And I felt like myself and them, we kind of got comfortable, right? But then once we hit that 4-game losing streak, we had a come to Jesus meeting where it's like, this is what we're going to be for the rest of the season. It's us against everybody, right? Because everybody had rolled us off. I had seen some articles on some websites from teams saying articles saying we weren't going to get it together. So it's like.
Hey, let me just jump in here, Jason, for the guys I just jumped in. When he talked about articles, we had literally, I've seen articles that come in, whether it was online or on paper, where people were just bashing the team, or they got what they deserve, or now they're losing. Where all the cockiness and all that coming from? So it was interesting for me as an outsider looking in and still see how the program was still being ran and pushing forward in spite of everything else that was being said about them. So, but I just wanted to throw that out there because that was one of the things that I saw that really I was just like, wow, people really going after these kids that way because they were winning. Now they're down, they're getting kicked basically.
And half of the stuff that was like being said about why our team was furthest from the truth. But I wasn't going to react to that and get into it with people and argue on blogs. That's how you feel. That's fine. All we can do is control what we can control. I can control what goes on in that locker room and what goes on that gym on game day. So as I said, we go through the 4-game losing streak. We had that meeting where, hey, from here on out, we're going to be focused. And after that 4-game losing streak, we came out. We were playing Wilmer, I don't know if you remember, and Chang hit the last second shot in overtime, and I like sprinted on the court, like grabbed him or whatever. To this day, and I tell people, that was a defining moment in our season. If he misses that shot and we lose 5 in a row, I'm not sure. I still was going to try to maintain the boat and reel him in, but I think it would have. I thought it would have went a different way, right? So that was one of the biggest shots of the season. After that, guys, we just locked in. We locked in defensively. We played together. We played for one another. I began to trust them. I began to let them go too, because the thing I wanted to do when I came into the program, I wanted to reel in and let the players know that, I'm in control. But also, when you're trying to say you're in control, you don't want to hold your players back from what they do best, right? I don't want to hold them either. So it's like it was times where I came to games where I'm like, tonight I'm gonna let them go, right? And once we started doing that, the season got better, and then we got into the playoffs, and our defense just turned up, right? We played Tech, and then we played Sauk Rapids, and our defense turned up. So now we're going to the section championship. I don't even go to work that day, right? I don't even work that day. And I get the call from Jared saying, hey, coach, we're going to have limited fans due to the virus, right? And that
was bogus, by the way, because I wanted to go to that game.
Right. And that was probably, how you go all day, you focused on the game plan, you focus on who you're playing, and you're trying to get your X and O's right. It's like right when that hit, it was just like everything just like went to a blur, because you have kids expecting to have this many people coming to see them play. My grandma want to come, my grandpa want to come, my cousin planned on coming. And it's crazy because me and Forrest, the coach from Alexander, when we got to the gym, I'm like, if this wouldn't happen, we'd have had about 4,000, 5,000 people in there. It'd have been packed that day. It'd have been packed. So now you got to try to get your players to understand that, hey, you can have certain people come, but everybody can't come. You know, who's important to you need to be here, and we will do what we can to get them there. And once I was able to get the players to know, like, hey, we should be happy we're still playing, because remember, a lot of teams wasn't still playing sections on that Thursday. They had told a lot of teams they wasn't even playing. Our game was the last game to get played out. So we get into the gym, and once we got into the gym, I seen their focus was different, man, and that's probably one of the better days, not only in their life, in my life too, because we never expected that. Like, nobody expected that for us. I can tell you right now, if somebody tell you that they thought we was going to win the section, or they thought I would be the coach doing it, they're lying, right? It's surreal, man, but I give all the credit to the players, because they bought in, right? They bought in. I gave them the tools to do what they can do to play championship basketball, and they bought in, right? I'm just sitting there, man, and so I'm just really happy for not only for the guys, but for Apollo too, right? For a while, we hadn't been to state probably since the last time Dean been there, and I think that was in 2012. And one thing is, when they were in 8th grade, and I remember seeing them at North, I'm like, hey, fellas, you guys keep your nose clean and continue to get better in basketball. By the time you juniors and seniors, you don't have a chance to go to state. I just didn't know I would be the coach coaching it, because I didn't think I would become a high school head coach that quick. But I did, and enjoy all the success, man, and then just try to stay humble through it all.
Jay, let's talk about the getting them to buy in.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've done to really get them to gel? Because even when you guys were losing, there was something about that team that we need to figure it out instead of the finger pointing or everything else. What were some of the things that you did to kind of, like, off the court stuff, to kind of really get them together?
Man, just having them simple conversations about what do you want? I mean, what are your goals? This ain't all about me. Apollo basketball is bigger than me. And like I told them, the one thing, man, just like honestly too, being real, like I told them, there's been plenty of kids that came in this gym and practiced for 4 years and practiced every day, blood, sweat, and tears, and didn't even get to a section title, didn't have a chance to win a conference. You have the talent to do that. Don't take that for granted, because what's going to happen, you're going to look back on it when you're 28, 29 and be like, dang, I wish I would have took this serious, right? But then at that time, you can show them visuals. Like I was showing them visuals of teams who were supposed to be good and win championships and didn't, based on selfishness, based on egos, just based on guys not doing the right things for the team to gel. And I think with these kids today, you got to be able to show them visuals. You can talk all you want, but if you can't show them visuals, or hey, this is what happened to this team, or this is what happened, they're not gonna buy in. That's just that's just this generation, period, right? That's not a bad thing. I think now, if I was in the generation and you were telling me like, hey, Jay, hey, and I was your player, and you like, hey, this how you, let me see. Not let you let me see do it, but let me see that team that really happened, right? And that's why I think stuff like the Michael Jordan Last Dance was so huge, because kids got to see how he wanted to win and lose, and how he reacted to things. I just think it was big for kids to see that. And that's what we try to do with our players, show them visuals of teams not succeeding.
My man. Hey, for everybody here, you guys know the format already. If you have questions for Coach Allen, feel free to jump in and ask. I want to cover this with you, Jason. You talked about driving to Maple Grove as a volunteer. For you guys on right now, Dave, you know this. Maple Grove from St. Cloud is a good 40-45 minutes. So to make the commitment to drive for free, basically, to be a volunteer assistant, says a lot about what you really wanted to do with your career. So what was that transition for you? Because you kind of mentioned, you start talking to the guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? So when that transition actually happens, after all the emotion goes out the way, what was your approach to, okay, if I'm the head coach, this is what I would do, as opposed to, okay, now I'm the head coach, all eyes on me, this is how I'm going to move forward? What was that process like for you?
I mean, the process, man, too, you got to realize when you're coming from, and which I'm pretty sure everybody on here realize that when you coming from an assistant coach to head coach, you got to stop being so friendly, right? I'm not your friend no more, right? I'm the head coach. So now when you get upset, you can't come talk to me about me, right? You got to go talk to the assistants about me, just like when Enoch was the head coach, they would come in, you know what I mean? But we got to have that good cop, bad cop. So at the time, you're a head coach, you got to find that balance between good cop, bad cop, right? So that was the one thing in my mind I was going to let the players know, that the ones that I joked with all the time, yeah, we can still have them joking conversations, but it's probably going to be more like off the court, right? So I had to get my focus in to go from Jason, the assistant coach, to Jason, the head coach, and this is what my expectations is. This is where it's at. It's not going to be no gray in between. Everything's going to be black and white. So that was the transition that I had to make to be the head coach. The other transition I had to make, too, was now I got to come up with my own philosophies. I got to come up with my own offense, and I got to pass that down to our JV coach, our sophomore coach, and our freshman coach. But I also got to make sure they comfortable with running it, and I got to make sure we got the personnel to run the offense that I want to run, because I believe the offense you have every year may change just based on the personnel you have, right? And that's tough at the high school level, because once the season starts, all you're dealing with is most of the time the varsity players. You may see your JV, you see your varsity and JV1. You may not see your sophomore and freshman as you're practicing on different courts, right? So just trying to find something that I feel will fit every level of our program.
And what was it for you? What was the process for you in terms of putting your staff together? That's a different ballgame now, because you're the man. You need to have guys that complement what you do and so on and so forth. What was that process like for you?
When I went into picking assistants, I wanted to pick somebody who I knew wouldn't be afraid to tell me what I didn't want to hear, but what I needed to hear, right? I need that assistant that if what I'm doing is not working, he's like, hey, coach, this ain't working. We got to go here. So that's what I look for in an assistant. I don't even look at I think a lot of coaches, a lot of people sometimes think when you look for assistants, you look for guys that play. I don't even look for if you play the game. I just want to know if you know the game, right? You don't have to play the game to be able to coach on our staff. I just want to know if you know the game, because there's guys that probably didn't play that know the game better than me. And I know that for a fact. They didn't play a lot of basketball, right? But I wanted to find guys who knew the game well. And then away from basketball, guys who was going to be willing to hold kids accountable, right? Because I'm with the varsity most of the time. Then you have your sophomore coach, you have your freshman coach, you have your JV coach. So I wanted to have coaches that was going to be accountable. So our first year, we had 5 coaches, and we had a freshman assistant. So the coach I had first wanted to get, which when I first hired, was Preston Whitaker, because he's one of the better players that had played through Apollo. And I'm trying to do this dialogue to get into him, was that at that time, he wasn't ready to be a high school coach. He had so much going on, right? But I used to tell him, like, hey, man, if you join this staff, I promise you, your basketball mindset, and we can make a run. And so he decided to join it this year, and he my best friend too, right? And sometimes best friend's not going to tell you what you want to hear, but it was plenty of times during this year where you're like, Jay, we got to go do this, or Jay, you got to settle down. And Don does that too, but it's different when you have your best friend, because a true friend going to tell you what you want to hear, not what you want to hear. And I'm happy with the staff we got. They do a good job helping out our players. They do a lot for the program. They do a lot for me to be able to just focus on basketball and X's and O's. And that's huge for the program.
Can I jump in there real quick, Mendel?
I'm offended that you asked.
Coach Allen, thanks for taking your time. My name is Menelik Fernandez. I'm located in Toronto, and I'm the interim head coach of Fleming College.
Okay, hey, nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
So something that you just said kind of piqued my interest a little bit there, because in today's world, it seems like most people are not willing to hire coaches that either did not play themselves, or that they don't have some sort of nepotism, cronyism relationship with, right? So for somebody who is open to doing so, as I am myself, hiring someone who either didn't play or I didn't have a previous relationship with, what are sort of the barriers of entry that you look for? Like, how do you test that somebody knows the game, or how do you know that he's going to hold people accountable? Like, how do you put them in those positions to judge?
So it was easy for me to do that at Apollo, because most of the assistants I worked with, they worked at Apollo, right? So I was able to have that conversation with them, but I was able to see them interact with kids outside of the basketball room. So I was able to see that. And then as far as like learning the game, you sit around and you have that conversation with people. You can be like, this guy may know a little basketball, right? You don't have to play, but just from conversation or times we may be at games and I may be around them and they may be telling me what they seeing at a game. And I'm like, hey, he knows a lot about it. You know what I mean? He knows basketball and we kind of share the same mindset. So just trying to build that off the court, because you can be in the gym with somebody and they can tell you they know basketball. But if we ain't watching no game, I need to hear, you know what I mean, what you're saying and what's your philosophy of basketball. And your philosophy may not have to match mine. I just want to hear what it said. And then we can mend it together and try to blend it, you know. So
as long as they can back it up and sort of make you think a little bit differently, you're open to it type deal.
Exactly.
I share the same, like, so for me, it's like, I like people who challenge me to think differently, et cetera.
Yep.
Like I didn't think of that like that at all. That's very interesting how you could get there. As long as they can kind of defend it, then.
Yep. I think it's the only way to grow too. Like to have people around there telling you stuff you don't need to hear. If everybody telling you you're doing this good, you're doing that good, or don't look at it from this way, you're never gonna grow as a coach. It's just, you're gonna be stuck in your old ways. And I'm probably stubborn as all get out. So I'm glad that my staff are able to convince me to be like, look at things from a different way. So.
Jay, my next question to you, we're gonna shift away from the floor a little bit. One thing that I've noticed since you've taken over, the program's social media presence is stronger than I've ever seen it in my 10 years in this area. What are some of the things that you've been doing to keep the program at the forefront so people can, wherever they go or they hear, the program is always coming back up? What are some of the things that you're doing?
Well, first of all, Coach Don Anderson, he runs our Twitter site, right? So anything Apollo basketball, he is putting on Twitter. Anything that got to do, you know what I mean? Anything that got to do with basketball and talking about getting better in the gym, he puts on Twitter. And I think it's good for kids to see that, right? I think, like I said, again, visual. So we may see, you know, you have the memes on Facebook. You may have them, and they may have, like, my best one I like is Tom Izzo say, kids in this generation want to skip the process. So we may post that on our Twitter page, but actually we may be speaking that in practice. But I think kids see, oh, Coach Allen saying that, well, Tom Izzo saying that too. It may stick with you, right? So we try to give the community of St. Cloud or who's ever on our Twitter page notice of our kids and things that our players are doing in the community or in AAU, or we got a lot of football, basketball players. So we try to highlight anything they're doing successful.
What are some of the challenges for that you've had to overcome as a head high school coach?
Some challenges we had to overcome, man. Sometimes it is not a knock, but getting parents and the players to buy in, you know what I mean, at the same time. Sometimes because a lot of times we may say, hey, we got to have practice this time, or we may have film at this time. And some of our kids, they're like, hey, my mom was here, or, you know what I mean, my dad was here. So it's like them really not, and it's not more the parents, it's the kids not explaining to their parents, like, hey, I got to be to practice on time. Not that I got to get here, that I got to be to practice on time. That's the one thing we sometimes struggle with. Is timing. And I think that sometimes happens just in this generation, where sometimes our players may come from programs, whether it's AAU, whether it's travel ball, where they've been able to they've been able to be late, and they've been able to explain why they're late. With us in high school basketball, I think if I'm letting you be late, I'm setting you up for failure when you get to college, right? So that's sometimes some of the things we struggle with, but nothing really big where I was like, hey, man, this was a struggle, right? Because I try to take everything for it is what it is. So we try to, whether it's a struggle, whether it's tough, whether it's a brick wall, we somehow trying to knock that down. So I try not to look at the downfalls or any struggles of being a high school basketball coach. But we have a good staff that whatever struggles we deal with, is somebody on there that's going to help us work through, man. And that's the thing of having a good coaching staff.
Talk to me finances.
Oh, man.
How do you balance
Oh, man. Now that's something I wasn't going to bring up, but yeah, that is a struggle, right? Because you may not have a lot of people on the booster club. But the one thing I say about this district is that they got a lot of grants we can get, for our players to get jerseys, to get travel suits. A lot of times I look to Coach Scalaru, assistant principal Scalaru, and Coach Beeler, the football, used to be football coaches. Well, Beeler's the head coach, and Justin used to be the football coach. I look at them to find ways how to fundraise, right? You got to fundraise, and a lot of times you got to go fundraise in the community, which can be tough at times because we have a lot of players that play in AAU. They got football going on. They're trying to work so they can have a little money for the summer. So it's sometimes tough trying to get them there to be able to fundraise. So sometimes we sell T-shirts. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not. But the best thing is like just trying to reach out to, like I said, our Apollo family, and then like trying to get those grants from the district, because it ain't like back years ago where a lot of booster club have 8, 9, 10 people on it. We probably have at times 3 or 4 people in our booster club. I think we only had 2 last year, but they do a good job. But that's tough, as you know. We only got 2 to 5 people on a booster club when they're supposed to be helping out the varsity, the JV, the sophomore, and the freshman. But they do a good job, and I'm appreciative of all the ones that we have had in my tenure. They do a good job making sure we needed what we needed here at Apollo.
Freedom of expression, sir. Talk to me about we had one young man, and I say we for those that are watching, because Jason and I worked together at Apollo High School before I was asked to transfer, and we had a couple young men. One of them in particular, who has basically become the son he never had, in Mr. Michael Gravel. Michael is the kid that don't bite his tongue. He's gonna let you have it, whether he's right or wrong. You gotta know how he's feeling.
Right.
What
Man,
what do you do with your guys to really give them their own voice?
You know what's big about, like, you know what was good about that 2020 class was that, like I said, the relationship I had with him. I have been knowing Mike since 8th grade. And, you know, we talk about a story with Mike. You know, I cut Mike, and not even because of attitude or nothing. I cut him from 8th grade age things. I thought he was too little, right? So I thought he was too little. We get to the end of the summer, and some of our players, like, have football or going on vacations. So I needed a player for the Comets. The one tournament you just seen us, I needed a player for that. And Mike came out, man, and went for 35 and got us in the Final Four game. We ended up losing. But after the game, I'm like, hey, man, did you play that way to prove to me that you was good? He's like, yep. And ever since then, I disrespected Mike. Like, whatever you think he going to do, he going to get it done. But with Mike, like I said, I was able to give them their voice, but I was able to hold them accountable, and I was able to be stern with them based on the relationship I had. They know when coach getting on us or when coach telling us about how we got to get better from life, it's real. Like, they know, because I've told them my story of how I got to be a head coach, and the trials and tribulations I had to go through, and the several times I was stepping on my own foot. I was getting in my own way, right? So I'm trying to explain that to them and showing them examples of that. Like, I'm going to give you your freedom, but be respectful about it, right? I don't want to be all, even as a coach, I don't want to call sets every time down. I want you to be able to play to your best ability. And I think however our relationships went, and we had some good relationships with those seniors, was just based on the relationships we had before I even was coaching them. So they trusted me and knew that they could trust me in whatever we were going through. And until to this day, Mike was just at our AAU practice yesterday. Whenever I need them, whenever they need me, they know I'll be there.
Hold on one second. There's a question. How do you balance and handle players and their parents' recruiting expectations with your team goal, or try to get them to reach their goal?
That's a good question. And that happened this year. So this year coming in, and we had, I would say, honestly, 7 or 8 guys that can get recruited. And I know each parent wanted their kid to get recruited here. The thing I try to say is, if we have 5 guys, like averaging double figures, we're winning and more college is going to come. But I also explained to them from the jump, it's not about me as far as your kid, it's about we. And if we are not buying in and playing good team ball, nobody's going to come and see your kid. And nobody's going to want to see a team that loses. So I try to get them to buy in. If we playing team ball, if we sacrifice me for we, everything else you want as far as your college recruiting will come in hand.
So, and have you ever had a situation where parents were just not having it during your time? Because, if I want my kids to go to NDSU, but you're telling me my kids not, how do you combat that and the reality of what they really can do?
Never really had parents. I honestly want to say to parents, I have never had a playing time conversation with a parent, right? And I've never had that conversation with a parent about recruiting. Now, we've had those conversations with players about playing time and recruiting, and I think it's easier to be realistic with a player than it is with sometimes the parent, right? Because there's certain things a conversation you want to have with a player you may not want to have with him and his parent. And it's like so say, let's say a kid say, hey, coach, I want to go to Baylor. I may look at the guys that's going to Baylor. Look at where they at. Look at where they ranked. Look at what they're doing as far as at their high school, right? I try to always add our kids up. And you got to be real with kids these days when it comes to recruiting. You can't sell them no dream. I'm real and direct with our kids to where this is where the level I see you at right now. This is where the level you can get if you continue to work, right? But if you're not going to work, you're going to stay at the level you are. But I try not to predict a kid's future, because then they get into, well, coach don't believe in me. No, I believe in you, but I got to be real with you too if I'm going to be your coach.
Next question is more of a personal one for me. And
yeah.
you know, as soon as I start asking, you know what I'm talking about. Player development.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hold up, man. That's a sore spot for me.
Right.
You and I, we've had a lot of conversation about that. What are some, I'm just going to say, issues
with player development
that you're seeing at the high school level that's impacting the game for high school players?
I think sometimes rushing player development too, right? I think sometimes kids may want to be, I may want to be a three-point shooter. Well, you can't even hit 8 out of 10 from the 15 foot right now, right? So I think getting the kid to buy into, this is how we're trying to develop you. This is the pace we're going to go at. Some kids, you're going to have a fast pace. You're going to be able to develop to the skills they want real quick. Some kids, you're going to have to take slow. But you got to get both of them to be able to buy in to both ways of how you're trying to develop them. And then the one thing we also run into is like getting kids to believe this is the position that you're going to play, right? Some kids may see Draymond Green 6'6" bringing the ball up. They may think they're going to do that their whole career. And in reality, you really can't dribble the ball, right? So just getting kids to buy into the way we think they should play. And that's not me trying to hold you back. It's just right now at Apollo, this is how I think you can benefit us. This is how I think you can develop. Now, you may go to your AAU coach, and he may tell you something different. That's fine. But right now, this is where we're seeing you at, and this is where we're going to develop. And these are the things we're going to work on. But I think it's tough for any coach to get some kids to buy in. Not all kids, but I think it's tough to get kids to buy in. And I don't blame it on kids. You blame it on people that's, you got so many years out there. You may have this guy telling this kid, man, you should be ranked number 5 in the country. Or you may have this guy telling this kid that's on JV, you should be starting on varsity. So you got to try to get kids to buy into the way you want them to develop. Sometimes that's tough, sometimes it's not. But overall at Apollo, I've been able to do a good job, knock on wood. We've been able to do a good job, me and my coaching staff, knock on wood, of getting players to buy in the way we want to develop them. And it has helped. It has helped them.
And have you used the AAU platform to help with your player development? And what I mean by that is when guys are going into the AAU, you let them know, okay, this is what I want you to work on. Mm-hmm. So that way next year it's an easier transition for us.
Yeah, what's a good thing is that some of our players play in town here for the Minnesota Comets, which I've been coaching for 3 years. So I'm able to have that conversation with their coach. Or a lot of AAU coaches have reached out to me like, Coach, what you want him to work with? Or how did he do this for you? Or this coach, this is what I think he should be working on. And I think you got to have that balance and that good relationship between the AAU coach and the high school coach. I don't want to try to push back on the AAU coach and say, hey, no, this is what I want him to do. Let's build a relationship. Let's let us both work positive for the kid. And I think sometimes this happens to where you hit a brick wall where the high school coach say this and the AAU coach say this. I've always been willing to listen to the AAU coach and have that conversation. Like, okay, I'm going to try that with him too, coach. There's times where I may not be able to get to one of my players during the season, so I'll give his AAU coach a call. Like, hey, coach, so-and-so, can you have that conversation with player so-and-so? And, just try to build that relationship too, man. So I think I think we got to find a way to where we all on the same page, or we all giving the kid his best, best knowledge for him to become a better player.
And that's key for me, and I appreciate you saying that, because one of the things that I've seen a lot lately from AAU coaches and even some player development coaches here in the Twin Cities, here in Minnesota, is coaches are becoming territorial of their players.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
if I'm a player development, they work with me, well, they can't work with this person. You know, I'm the head coach of the program. I only want them to work with this person and not that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely appreciate you saying that. That collaboration to help that player be the best that they can be.
And as you know, our players work out with a lot of different guys. I'm not getting ready to go tell our players not to work out with this person, not to work out with that person. However you feel like you're going to get better, as long as when we come in here for Apollo, you're doing what we ask you to do, we're fine with it. And most of the kids our kids that train with have done a good job of them improving basketball-wise. So I haven't had a kid that came and I'm like, you should train with him. End of the day, I don't want to down talk another coach either, right? I don't want to be saying I'm better than this guy or I'm better than that guy. I just want to be the best coach I can. And I'm sure some trainers want to be the best trainer they can. For some kids, they may work. For some kids, they won't. But me and our players are not getting ready to have a negative conversation about the AAU coach, trainer, and nobody else. I'm not having that conversation with our players. So I try to make sure I have a good relationship with whoever they work with in the summer outside of me.
Malik, you had a question? Or you just looking at the – okay. Jay, I wanted to
just leaning in because I'm captivated, I'm listening in.
Well, we appreciate that, my man. We appreciate that. So Jay, going back on your coaching staff, when you're running your practices, how do you, as the head coach, help your coaching staff develop to be the best assistants that they can be, for not only for the program but for themselves as coach moving forward?
I mean, for some of them, our assistants they got, except for actually our assistant, Don Anderson, he's been coaching longer than me, right? So he modeled for me some things that I needed to know before. Most of our coaches, I just try to be that example, right? Show them how, if I'm doing a drill, try to show them how I would do this drill. If we're doing player development, show them how to do player development. If I'm running offense, show them what offense they run. But our practice is kind of set up is where I can see everybody practicing and how they working. So in the middle, so we got 3 courts. In the middle of the court, it's varsity and JV1 practicing together. So at that time, I have me, myself, and Coach Don Anderson. We're together. So I can see how he's working with his players. He can see how I work with mine. On the side court, you have Coach Preston Whitaker, and he has the JV2 coach. So I can go around there and look and say, okay, this is what Preston doing with his team. And then on our other side, court, we have our coach Damon Westridge, who coaches with our freshmen. So I go over there and peek every now and then, see what they're doing. If I feel like I need to add my 2 cents into something, I do. Sometimes I don't want to stay, even though I know it's my program. I mean, I know it's my program. I want it to be our program. So I kind of want to give them, in a sense, give them power to make their own mistakes. Then I'll be like, hey, this is where I think it should be at. But I try not to hover over my assistant coaches. They come and they'll have their conversations of how practices went or how a game is went, and I give my feedback. But I kind of want them to fall on their own like I did, and then we'll learn from just having those conversations. Man, I don't want to try to tell them, well, hey, this is what you done. If I see something and it's not working, I say, hey, man, maybe you should be playing this. Maybe you should run this. This is how we should do that. But I haven't really had to do that much. Most of the time, they come to me and ask questions, and we have those conversations. I tell them, too, like, I struggle with this, too, or, hey, I was successful with this, too. I try to make them not like I'm invincible. I have mistakes, too, that I still make as a varsity head coach, and I'm trying to learn and grow every day. So
and I appreciate that because, it's like you said, it's your program, but a lot of coaches usually take that, well, it's my program, so this is what it is.
And I try to make sure, like, every time I say something, it's we and our. Like, the program is bigger than me. It's not about me. It's about those kids. So I try to make sure we say we and our when I'm describing Apollo basketball.
Now, how do you – one of the things that I noticed here, and we had Coach McKenzie on a few months back, it seems to me that it's different the way it's done here in St. Cloud as opposed to Twin Cities. How are you, as the head coach of the varsity program, work with your feeder program into Apollo to make sure that these kids are understanding what the expectation is when they get to freshman and sophomore? Or how do you work with those coaches to get these kids prepared so that when they come to you, you're not doing stuff that they should have been doing already?
Right. Well, first off, with our feeder program, SCABA, we're able to, like we've been there before, we're able to go to the tryouts. So a lot of times at tryouts, we'll see, well, hey, this is a North kid or this kid go to the South. So I'm able to have that conversation with those kids about, hey, man, this is what I think you should probably work on, or hey, this is what you're doing good at. So we're able to have those conversations at the tryouts. I may go, like we have the in-town SCABA tournament. I may go there, but I try to I try to sit back from afar. I try not to be that high school coach that's always in the middle of where all the parents had that conversation. If I go, I try to stand back. I observe from afar. Now, I may have those conversations with the SCABA head coaches. I may even go visit the practices at times. Like last year, I went to visit a couple SCABA practices at times just to sit back and see how the coaches work and just observe how the players are working. Because you got to think about it. In 8th grade, I want to see how you going to react in 8th grade, how you going to react in 9th grade if you're playing for Coach Westrich, or if we move you up and you're playing for Coach Whitaker, or if we move you up and you playing varsity. Because as you know, we have moved the 8th grader up on varsity, was able to play. And we're thinking about doing that this year with another kid. But I think being in the feeder program is huge, bigger than what I thought when I first started coaching. I didn't know how big it was to be involved in your feeder program, and I think that's huge. And so SCABA does a good job of reaching out to us coaches if we ever want to come to a practice. They even asked us at time to try to coach some of those teams, but as you know, high school coaches just so busy. We do a good job of having the SCABA travel teams come play at halftime of our basketball games. There's times where AP Scalarude because he coaches SCABA, he has let his players sit on our bench, and I went over there and had conversations with them. So it's just been a lot of different things going on, man, where I'm able to be in the feeder program. And I think working at North also actually helped. Working at North actually helped me with that too, because a lot of the players know, oh, that's Coach Allen or that's Mr. Allen. So just being involved in the school district, man, has been a really big help for me to be involved with the feeder program.
All right, my man. Next question is a personal one for you. Family, right? For those of you guys that are on here, and I appreciate you guys, and those that will be watching later, I can say this without a shadow of doubt. This dude is hooked on basketball. Coach Allen, if you go on his Facebook page, 9.5 out of 10 posts is something basketball related.
Right.
How do you balance the family with your commitment to the program?
You know, man, for a while, man, like I said, when I was just like out here doing, you know what I mean? I really didn't have no balance, right? So then I start coaching, and that's all I locked myself into because I had not really gave too much attention to a lot of stuff, right? And so once I start coaching, man, it started making me be a better person, a better dad, right? Just wanting to be there for my kids. And it's crazy that it took coaching to see that. But whereas you start working with kids and they don't have that, right? So now it makes you want to be a better father, man. I'm working on that daily. And it's tough at times because you're right. I try to lock in the basketball because, like I said, it saved my life, right? Like coaching basketball saved my life. But I think over the last 2 or 3 years, I did a good job of balancing. Now, I may still watch my games in here and scream and yell, but I still do trying to spend time with my daughters as much as I can because, like you said, once the season come in, you get locked in, and sometimes your family suffer, whether it's your girlfriend, whether it's your family back in Indiana, whether it's your daughters, they suffer. And I can say over the last 3 or 4 years that I got my life in order, man, I became a better dad, but I've been able to balance. And that's one thing somebody let me know is like, when you get into coaching, Jason, you got to find that balance. You can't be 100% locked into coaching and 0% locked into your kids, your family, or your significant other, whatever you got going on, man. And I'd like to say I've done a better job over that the last 4 years, and I continue to improve in that every day, right? So that's where I'm at as far as with family, and yeah, that's it.
Let's talk about the last few months, man. How has COVID changed you directly as a person, as a coach, and what are some things that you've learned that you're excited to implement in your program?
Oh man, COVID, like being through the quarantine, man. First of all, man, it forced me to start working out, man, because I wasn't working out. We weren't able to go nowhere during the quarantine, so it forced me to work out. But it also forced me, like I had told you when we were talking earlier, it forced me to sit down and watch a lot more film than what I usually am, right? Because you can't go out. Like I said, I feel like for me, I get better. I coach AAU to get better in the summer, so I wasn't doing no live basketball coaching during quarantine. So it forced me to read more. It forced me to sit down and watch basketball more. A lot of times when I watch basketball, I'm always like looking for a play. So if I don't see no play, then I got to turn it. Well, how you gonna turn it when there ain't no live basketball going on? So it forced me just to watch whole game. And like now, if I'm watching two teams, I'm watching the whole game. But it forced me to watch the whole game to where I was like, oh, that's a good set. So instead of looking at a game looking for a set, I'm just looking at a game, looking at the actions they run. You know how teams run and how they may run this action with a double screen, or they may come down and set the down screen. So just watching actions of how guys are running and how teams are getting into their motion offense. So COVID changed that. It also changed, man, just how much I like wash my hands. I think I wash my hands like 20 or 30 times a day. I mean, now when I coach on the bench for AAU, we bring in hand sanitizer. So, and it changed me, to be honest, man, not to take this game or to take being able to live on your own free will for granted. That's what it took me more than anything. And not saying I ever took coaching basketball for granted, because I didn't, but it took me to never do, because it can be taken from you just like that, period, just like that, right? But it also forced you to spend more time with your family, like you said. You know, it forced you to spend more time with your family, forced you just to give you a time to sit back and think about how the year went. And I had a lot of things to think about, man, so it just gave me time to think about how far I came in life, right? Gave me time to think about where I came at, more time to talk to family, more time to hang with my daughters, more time to hang with my girlfriend. And so it was good, man. It did some good for me. I try not to look at the downside of the virus, because that can be irritating when you think about no college football. Our team didn't get to play in the state. We got to watch the NBA in the bubble. Kids can't do it. So sometimes, man, I try not to even look at it as a negative, even though it's real when it's right there in front of you.
Oh man, it is. We only have 5 minutes left, Jay. Time fly.
All right, man.
Crazy.
Hopefully I ain't talk too much, man.
Huh?
Hopefully I ain't talk too much.
You see the look on my face? No, but
Manel's got jokes, man.
Hey, I said this, man. Like, he is the brother I never had, man. I have 2 little brothers, but he's definitely that brother, man. That, you know, I can watch what he's doing, and if I reach out to him, he and I, we can sit down and have real conversation about life, about anything. So
yeah,
and he says stuff like that. That's why I'm like, man, stop it.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about this, Jay, real quick. With everything that happened in the state of Minnesota, right? What was that conversation like for you and your players following the chaos that happened in Minneapolis and everything else that ensued?
Man, that conversation, I mean, it really wasn't tough, because we got a good group of guys, and they get along. But what I explained to them too, don't let this stuff go on the media separate you, you know, because we got black players, we got white players, and it's like, don't let this media separate you, right? Whatever's going on in the media, we got to stay together. And then whatever happened, it's real, right? Like, it's real. That happened, and that happens. That's been happening a lot in America. And I think with everything going on in Minnesota, that happened with the George Floyd case in Minnesota, it brought attention to a lot of stuff we didn't realize was going on, right? And I think just having that conversation with my players, like, remember, we had some come up here in St. Cloud, and I'm like, hey, keep your nose clean, stay out of stuff. Stay out of stuff, stay out the way. And I get you upset, but it's a way we got to react when we upset. And I think for the most part, our players, even our former players, they did a good job dealing with it. It really wasn't too many issues with our team, you know, with that situation. But it was good to have that conversation with them, be real with them about it. Excuse me.
What was it like for you, man? And I asked this question to
I remember that.
what you were. What was that like for you? And I really want you to share that, because for people on here and people that'll be watching, right, I'll remove myself from that situation completely.
Right.
Because I just did not know how to deal with the emotion I was feeling and everything else. I basically stopped watching everything.
Right.
And it took postings from Coach Allen, and something that he said on Facebook that I saw. I was so moved. I called him right away, like, man,
I remember that. Yep.
walk me through that, because to me that was very powerful. So what was that like for you when you got in that area?
Well, I know you know me. I don't really, even if you look on Facebook, I don't really try to have racial conversations, man, because you get so angry with them, right? I feel like if I have to explain to you that this is what's going on and you telling me no, it's not racism, it's just too much going on. So I try not to have those conversations. So Michael Gravel, his uncle Damon, was like, hey, man, I'm going down here to the memorial. And I'm like, just riding past. I'm like, okay, let's go. So we get to going down there, man. As we get down there, the closer I got to it, the more like it started being real and I started feeling the emotions. We turn the corner to go. It's a long street you got to go to get to the memorial. As soon as we turn the corner, we see 4 or 5 kids, not kids, probably teenagers. They standing there like protecting the store with their guns, whether it's their dad's store or their aunt's store, whoever store it is, they protect them with their guns. So that kind of shook me, like, man, what's going on? So as we drive down, we see another group of people. They protecting the store. They got their guns, they got their bats, and they standing like, this how it's gonna be tonight, and we're not budging. So we get on down by the memorial, and as soon as we pull up, some guys run up to us, and they're like, hey, what y'all doing here? And we're like, we just here to see the memorial. They're like, okay, we'll walk y'all up there because people been coming by here yelling stuff at us and throwing stuff at the memorial. So they walked us up there, and man, when I got up there, I was just like, this crazy. This could have been any of us, right? This could have been anybody here, and this happened. And the area where it's happened, it was a busy area, and it's just like you had to humble yourself, and you try to put yourself in somebody's shoes, man. And it was just tough. But the best thing about that memorial was black people, white people, Arab, whatever nationality out there getting along, you know what I mean, paying their respects to George Floyd. And that was the best thing. Then I went that night. I went back 2 days later, and it was, man, they were doing the chants, they was barbecuing, but like I said, it was all colors, all races getting along, man. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing, right? Because at the end of the day, in order for racism to go, you have to get help from people outside your own race, vice versa. You know, I mean, in order to get help with racism, you got to get help from some people outside your race, man. And we've done that, and it's been good. Do you be angry sometime? Yeah, you get angry, right? Racism makes you angry. Watching, like, honestly, I watched the first 10 seconds of the video, just didn't watch it no more because I didn't want to be angry. Because when I get angry about racism, man, it affects how I treat other people. And I don't want to do that, right? I got 7 mixed sisters. I got a lot of friends that are not black, right? I got a lot of white friends. I coach kids, you know what I mean, that are white. I got my AAU team, and I don't never want nobody to feel like Jason dislikes us because of something somebody else do, right? So, man, and it was crazy because I had a lot of conversations with my AAU parents. I had conversations with Alicia. I had conversations with Justin, with Beeler. And they all was just like, man, how can we help? You know, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, I went over to Adrian Washington, did his podcast, and man, he just had that conversation like, Jay, don't be on Facebook arguing with people. You already said what you need to say. Why you keep going back with somebody who's already showed you that they think it ain't no problem with what happened? So I let it go, man. And it took about 2 or 3 weeks to let that stuff go because you keep imagining in your head. Then the thing about that situation was, I started going back and watching old African-American movies and stuff like that. And it's like I had to be like, whoa, because I was getting to the point where I was just angry with any contact I had, anybody I seen that wasn't understanding that what happened to George Floyd was wrong. You know what I mean?
Oh, Jay, my man, it's 4:31 right now, brother. If anyone is interested in reaching out to you, learning about the program, how can they get a hold of you, man?
On the Twitter side at AHS Coach Allen, at Coach Allen. You can get on me on Twitter site, or you can follow me on Facebook at Red Allen. You can follow me there, man. But I want to share a new connection with coaches too, because these last 2 years is the 2 years where I felt like I reached out to more coaches, or I was able to meet everybody. I want to learn from everybody. I just don't want to learn from my friend that I hang with or Dick Vitale on TV. I want to learn from people that not living in Minnesota or living in the cities about how I can become a better coach. And I want to work on that every day. And I feel like this summer, That's something that I've done, and I'm sure all these other coaches have done. I'm just happy you had me on here, man. Like I said, if you didn't knew what I was doing, which you probably did 7 or 8 years ago, man, and now where I'm at in life, man, it's humbling. You know, it's humbling. Definitely. Will you keep this up too so I can put this in the chat? All right.
So Coach Choi just shared his phone number on the chat.
Yep.
Mentor League just did the same thing. Since you talking about, you know, reaching out to coaches, I'd like to invite you to the Rising Coaches, risingcoaches.com. Just go ahead and check it out, brother. Sign up. It is a wealth of knowledge and content from every single coaches that we have. So that's definitely something that you should check into, and I will follow up with you in 2 days.
But me and you after this talk, you coach at Tech, man, and I heard you work at Tech. It's over, man. You're the rival. We can't deal no more, man. You're the rival, man. I take rivalry serious, man. I'm just messing with you, man.
Okay, so here's the funny thing about that. He's trying to give me a lot of mess on that. So we're gonna close it out today, fellas. We're gonna close it out like this. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. We're gonna go off, and then if you guys want to stay on it, just chit chat a little bit, we can do that. So risingcoaches.com. I appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.